Marco,
Sean,
story time, my friend.
it is story time, and as you
Um,
know, and everybody knows, the first chapter is it's the one that makes me feel like, do I want to keep reading this book or not? Like you better have a good beginning of a
I
story.
know, and I think we're gonna get that
I
that
think
good
so.
beginning.
I think so.
That
No
good beginning.
pressure on
No
our
pressure on
guest
the
today.
guest, exactly. Joining us late in the evening from the other side of the pond of the U.S. at the moment, and two different countries, but global perspective on GRC and many things surrounding that. I'm thrilled to have Anders and Mark on. How are you guys?
Good,
Great.
thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
It's good,
Very
good,
good.
good to have you on. I'm excited to hear your story and the journey that you're taking with Eve GRC. And before we get into the topic of how the company was founded, why it was founded, and all that good stuff, maybe a few words from you, Anders, and then kind of your journey leading up to Eve, and then Mark will hear a few words from you.
sure, absolutely, and thanks again also for taking the time and inviting us in. It's important for us, of course, as being a startup, to get an opportunity like that. I think if you go and also look at me and my co-founders' journey the last 20 years, we've been working as many others in GSC. I've been in Big Four as very young. Then I've been in chief risk officer in global companies, one of them with more than 500,000 people, servicing global pharma companies, banks, setting the bar high with increasing regulations for governance, risk, and compliance. I've seen and had teams, and also myself, of course, working in the old regime with very manual and heavy work to show compliance, control work, to be audit ready, both for clients and also regulators. And we really wanted to, when we started Eve, to change that. We wanted to give something back. We wanted to automate. And with AI now being at a different level completely, we basically wanted to create a body to risk and compliance and first line, second line, or third line people. And that's what has been important for us. So that's where we started out. And you can kind of say Eve is eating up the GSC pyramid from the bottom, helping with some of the manual work, helping with the control evaluation, but also helping with providing transparency to leaders and boards. And we succeeded with that, but it's not only for enterprises; it's also for partners, for advisors and auditors, which might have been a little bit behind the curve when it comes to automating, but that's really what we wanted to do. So really, we are two founders who've been working a lot. I wouldn't say the impolite word for that, the French word, working a lot to really get things done, improving processes, risk management, and all of that. And now we saw the opportunity to really give something back to get it automated. And apparently, we are one of the first. And we also recognized for that by global companies and global advisory and assurance companies as Big Four who are using our solution. So that's the story. We're really people who felt the pain of having to follow regulations and customer regulations and the trend within GSC. And now the time has come actually to completely change that around. You know, both of you, Marco and Sean, that people working within GSC is blamed often within organizations from looking down into the table, spending too much time on finding gaps and issues, and not providing enough help without stepping out of their role, whether they are second line risk compliance ISO officer or whether they're third line internal audit. But really, with an AI as ours, not hallucinating, there's a completely new world opening up for them to actually help and provide the sufficient guidance coaching without moving out of their role. And that's the history. I've been chief risk officer. My co-founder has been chief audit executive. I've been partner in Ernst Young in Scandinavia for GRC and third-party risk management, and after that for risk management in PwC and for sustainability reporting and compliance. You know, that's been a big thing over here in Europe. And all of it, to be honest, except for getting a little bit of help from reporting GRC system for data collection and reporting, you know, all of it is manually. We wanted not to stop it, but we wanted to not disrupt it. I don't want to call it that. We want to empower it or power it with something which was strong, created by people with super experience, and then get it out there. And that's what we did. And that's also what we're still on the journey to do. So I'm excited. I think it's a completely new world. I think companies should not be afraid of the AI risk if it's managed rightly by risk professionals, as we are. It's safe and it's rocking their world. Sorry for the long intro, but I'm really excited and I feel strongly about.
You make our job a lot easier.
That's
so
right.
No worries about that. And
we share the passion for sure.
I think both knowing Sean and myself, we do have already a lot of questions. But before we go there, Mark, a little introduction about yourself, and how did you start working with Anders here?
Well, you know, to make it short, I have about 2 decades of experience in fraud prevention and cybersecurity, and you know, we all get hit up by headhunters and all that. I got one day an email, and the email was, I don't know, it just seemed different. It seemed special. And I got a call with Anders. I had the pleasure to speak with him. And instead of a simple pitch about the product and, you know, I'll make you a millionaire type of thing, Anders was more interested in my family and my person. And, you know, we create so often this stamp on companies that are, you know, we are a family. But for the first time, listening to Anders and his energy, his love, and the pain he went through to create this, I knew I was in the right spot. I mean, you guys have both been in Luca. You spend evenings with my family, you know, and it was a pleasure. Again, thank you, Sean, you know, for introducing us to Jill and Marco, meeting you the first time. But you guys know where I come from, right? So no bullshit, full of heart and supporting, you know, ideas that matter. And when I spoke to Anders the first time, I realized that this is a person who not only thought about the product, he's been there. I've spoken to so many CISOs, and you know, we talk about, you know, training the teams, you know, being out there, but there comes a point where they also, you know, open up and say, listen, man, our compliance team. At that point, I had no, you know, connection to companies that could do what Eve does. And having the talk with Anders was like, no ego, a family, a true family, you know, connection that we extend to our clients. So we are basically a family. We work together. We, you know, there's no hierarchy. There's no nothing. You know, Anders is no ego. Whatever he can do, whatever call he can jump on matters. And the same thing matters to us for our clients. So if somebody's in France and says, listen, hey, Mark, I'm working on a manufacturing consultancy. You worked in manufacturing before. There's no ego. There's no, you know, we want to do the best for the people that need Eve. And once I had the chance to walk through and to visualize Eve and understand Eve's positivities compared to what I've heard from CISOs, I knew this was a company to be. There's heart, there's, you know, there's ideas, there's a company that is just unique. See, I'm lacking words simply because I've never seen this 2 decades of sales. So I'm really, really proud and happy to be a part of Anders' journey and hopefully to be a part that will make a difference.
I love that. I love that. I agree. And that will be the world we all want to live in, where we can work and have respect and friendship and still make a lot of good stuff happen. Yeah. So we'll go back to you, Mark, soon enough. But I want to go to Anders, because for me, being somebody that look at technology from a societal perspective, and you kind of mentioned there, you know, AI is still in that it's not the uncanny valley, but there's still this perception is it's going to get our jobs, it's going to do the right thing, it's going to hallucinate, it's going to change the way we live. When and are you realizing if you are at the right time in the right place, and this is the right time to start trusting AI to help, not to take over the job, but to help to accomplish many of the tasks that we find ourselves having to deal with?
Well, first of all, I just need to comment also on Mark. I got up at 4 o'clock this morning, not because I wanted to, because I couldn't sleep, because we had one of the biggest global pharma companies in the world wanting to use our solution because they were drowning in work. But it also relates to what you said, Marco. When I think we sat down and then we were discussing what would really help compared to both second line and third line. But I also been out in the industry. I was interim chief operating officer, so in a company with more than 60,000 employees, and that's where you really get your hands dirty. But we really wanted to get something who could release the heavy duty of everything related to GRC. And we all know the heavy lifting doesn't lie with the risk CISOs alone. It also lies with the people who have to actually do the job, get things done, implemented. So when AI took off, let's just say in around 2 years from before now, we were thinking, could we tame it? Could we avoid the hallucinations? Could we enhance it so it actually knew the stuff? And a lot of things have happened since then. I recognize that, and it's getting, but let's also be honest, it doesn't know what it doesn't know. And the expertise within information security, cyber resilience, is not publicly available information. So these large language models, how on earth were they going to know what good practice is? And we said, okay, let's do that. Let's develop that. Let's get rid of the hallucinations. Let's get an upgraded agent or agents, because it's not just agent. Let's overlay agent on agent, so you get both an expert in risk and compliance, an agent in assurance/audit. Bring it together. Let's train them in the good practice, not only the ISOs, but also the operational practice. Let's bring our friends in, the consultants, and let's get them to fuel and power up an AI or several AI agents. So when you use it, you don't only get evaluation of whether you're compliant, you also get recommendations. That's what we wanted to do, and that's what we started out in February last year, in 2024. In September 2024, we launched an AI agent who could evaluate more than 1,100 controls or requirements in less than 15 minutes, better than 5-6 years experience Big Four consultants. Not that that's the bar, but also giving recommendations. And then we continued on the back of that. That's really the engine we wanted created, and what we're moving towards. I'm not saying I don't know whether we'll get there. That's what we're working for. We're building a factory for all GRC professionals, whether they're within cyber, more operational risk, or other things, where they can come with their frameworks, their own controls, get it set up in our Eve, and get the help they need. Not only for the gap control work, but also actually for the what should I do when something is missing, and also how do I reduce my internal audit, but also external audit costs. So that was where we started, and then a lot of things has happened then, and we have clients, and I have a few funny stories funny and also good stories to tell, because it's working. We also have tons of clients who say, well, we have this AI team. They say they can develop everything, but do they really want to go into developing AI agents for something that is as complex as the frameworks within GRC? Do they want to maintain them when the regulations is changing all the time? and do they want to become a software company? We have become it, and we're proud of it, and we have some of the leading organization. So that's kind of where we departed from, and where we are right now. And we're talking to some of the biggest players within GRC, cyber, and TPM, who we are working on integrating our model. Obviously, because as you might know, they don't have this. They are still, from a technology point of view, in whether you call it second or third generation GRC, cyber, TPM solution, they are focused on the workflow. They're not focused on the brain, if I can put it that way. So the expertise of actually telling, is this okay or not, and what should we do? And that's what we focus on. That was kind of the gap which we saw, and also what we felt when we were in operations. So, and that's our focus. We don't want to compete against Diligent, ServiceNow, and others. We want to help them, and people who have needs, which we all have, actually getting a solution that works, but which has been tested radically, so you don't end up coming up with recommendations or gap which is unreliable. That's also why Microsoft, which we build it in, is so keen on helping us succeed, and has selected us as a growth account in Europe right now.
Yeah, and Anders, I want to touch on something, because you and I have a similar background in terms of, I'll say, nerding out on GRC. So many know I was involved in building a SIM around 20 years ago, but I was also involved in acquiring and building GRC technologies for the same company I worked for. And I've seen an evolution, as in many things, tech and cyber and risk and compliance, where it's more systems, more data, more stakeholders, more complexity, more work, more stakeholders. Again, who are you delivering it for? Why are you delivering the outcomes of this stuff? And you mentioned this pyramid at the beginning. I'm wondering if you can kind of describe the pyramid and perhaps the workflows you also mentioned, where you kind of fit in to help not just achieve compliance, not just drive business decisions around risk, but also actually help the company achieve what they're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. So the pyramid, of course, you have someone who needs an executive summary, but to get that for decision purposes and everything, everyone is talking about enterprise risk. GRC is there to support decision and driving and supporting a sustainable business, a reliant business. But it doesn't happen without the proper risk assessment, the proper knowledge of actually how you're performing from a risk and compliance perspective. And that today is done semi-manually. I know within financial controls and others, it's getting more and more automated, but in reality, a lot of it is manually. So let's just be honest, in first line, so in the process function, they're relying on manual assessment. So that's a drop-down. How reliant is a drop-down? So a self-assessment 1 to 5 with some wording. Imagine if you could have that automated based on evidence. So an AI actually evaluates how close am I to the desired position with the documentation I have. And that's exactly what we have created for the bottom of the pyramid. Then on the second level, so in the pyramid, that's the second line and third line function, going in and evaluating control assessment, testing, and so on and so forth. We have that. And then, of course, the highest level, which is the management information, that's the dashboard, that's the BI. But imagine if you have that based on evidence. It's an evidence-based approach. It's AI. If it's not there, it doesn't approve it. And all regulations, almost, since the GDPR wave has moved towards evidence-based. So you also need to be able to demonstrate it to regulators. And that's what our AI does. Now, imagine you had a GRC setup, whether it's cyber or anything else, where your cockpit as a company is based on evidence, whether it's extracted from systems and our AI is then evaluating based on API extract, or whether it's actually submitted evidence. And that's basically what we have built, Sean. So it's not the traditional human interpretation, also outside the organization. Right now, we're working with huge, both financial and non-financial institutions around third-party risk management. And you know what? I have a chief supply chain officer who's waiting right now because we're doing a proof of concept. We're gonna do the work for 15 full-time employees, following up on third parties because our AI is not sending out questionnaires. These third parties will get access to it directly, upload the evidence of compliance within cyber and resilience, and the AI will instantly tell where they are. And if they're missing stuff, it will actually tell them what to do. So that's not the traditional GRC, in my view, but that's what I would have loved to have 6, 7, 8 years ago. But if you asked me 3 years ago, I would have said, get out of here. That doesn't exist. You're imagining, and or you are gonna use RPAs like simple robots, but that's not what we're dealing with right now.
So talking about that, and maybe Mark, you can jump here if you want to, or Anders. Are you in a situation where companies in different verticals are aware of what is possible, or are you still breaking the news to them? Like you contact them and say, look, you're running into all this problem when it comes to GRC, ESG. We can help. And is the reaction like, oh, I didn't know about that? I mean, are you like early educating, or there is already a demand for what you're doing?
Well, I think that Eve as a product is, is an early demand. Many people don't know that, there is something out there that can assist. And that's very important to understand. So we have a great team of consultants. We're building an incredible partner system where we say, you have a seat at the table. You're going to be a part of us. We will learn from you. You will learn from us. And the product that we have developed, that Anders has developed with his team, is incredible. I've had so many talks in the past, selling certificates for cybersecurity and so on and so forth. And when you sit in a call with a CISO, the call is about, great, okay, so we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do this. But, Mark, man, if we had somebody that could help us with this, and that is where Eve comes in. Eve is an incredible product. Eve is something that, there's products similar to Eve, but that do not have the full spectrum that we offer. And, I think that is what is important, and that is what, will make Eve grow and become one of the most important compliance products out there. So, yeah.
And Anders, I want to take this moment, perhaps to have you share. Is there, if you could pick one example that kind of either encompasses what Eve does for an organization, I'd love to hear a story about an outcome where a team was struggling. Maybe Mark has some to share here as well. But a team is struggling. Team was buried. Executives weren't getting what they need. Auditors were scrambling to help the company achieve a level of compliance with one or multiple regulations or what have you. And then you came in and helped unlock things, jump hurdles, move faster. Can you share a story like that?
I'd love to, Sean, and thanks for that. Well, I have a few ones. Let me just start with a corporate one for an enterprise clients. We were talking and also working with a financial services institution, a tier 1 bank, where we were engaging with the chief compliance officer. Obviously, our product is relevant for a chief compliance officer. They need to check everything, but it's a relentless work and it's heavy, especially with new resilience framework coming out in Europe around cybersecurity and resilience. We had a call and talk also with the chief information security officer. And also, to be honest, he was saying, I don't believe it. I don't believe AI can do this. but let's do a proof of concept. So that was not the best start of a potential partnership. But he also said, let's have the legal, one of the legal senior experts compare your AI analysis related to information security to what it should be. So let him review, and then 3 days after, and I'm 3 days nothing. And even though the legal expert, he was saying, that was really, really tough because it takes a lot of time to do this analysis. We were just doing one documentation up against the regulations, so the controls, and the senior legal expert says, it's really, really detailed, your AI. Yeah, I said, and then I said, yeah, because we told it to be. If you want me to change it so it prioritizes certain aspects, we can do that. Then what happened in the meeting was the chief information security officer, no, not the chief information security officer, but the CIO, he said, this is amazing. So everything we've been fearing with AI, with these general models, with hallucination, you kind of fixed that. I said, yeah, that's what I told you in the first meeting. And then he said, and turned to the chief compliance officer, we should use this for everything. And he said, yeah, we're gonna use it for resilience regulations in Europe. We're gonna use it for contract evaluation for the outsourcing contract. We're gonna use it for third-party risk management. And he said, no. And then I could see the head of the chief compliance officer. She's a really, really strong chief compliance officer. She was kind of paused, and they said, what do you mean? Well, he said, no, I don't mean just this. I mean everything. So after that, he pulled me in to a meeting and said, I want GDPR. I want this. My team is hurting. And that's the journey we're on. So, and that's also what Mark was alluding to before. We do partner up with our clients because we want to follow them. So if a lot of them are saying secure control framework, GDPR, we can set it up in weeks because we have the agents who are strong enough. We spent more than a year creating those. Another story is KPMG. You should imagine that they, and also other big four, have created this and automated. They haven't. They have within certain domains, and I know, but they have not. They are now using our AI for assurance and consultancy. One task, which is of course one of the biggest, they used to spend 120 hours on reviewing certain documentation. Now our AI does it in 15 minutes. That's more than 350 pages. And then they spend 4 to 5 hours validating. And validating is important because that's the good practice when you use AI. And then they're sending it to their clients, and it comes with a track record of where our AI has found the good stuff, and our AI even gives them the documentation. So that's 2 examples of how powerful AI can be if you use it right and not just rely on, I guess, the ones we all have access to. So I don't know.
I wanna go right there. Anders, if you don't mind, because when I look at the agentic AIs and the AI, there's always the risk, like where is the data gonna go, the privacy, talking about GDPR in Europe, of course, very relevant, but also very relevant even when there is not a GDPR, because if the data of your customers, your documents are gonna go public on an open system, it doesn't work. So I wanna ask you this, like, first of all, the advantage of being able to resolve the hallucination by, I'm assuming, creating a knowledge base that is very funnel into what the AI needs to do, what shouldn't do. I'm assuming in a very simple term that's what it is, but you can explain me a little bit better. And then I'm thinking the capacity of customizing the AI according to the customer and the needs that you're dealing with. So maybe you want to touch a little bit on that. It's not just the one solution for all, and it's going to fit you well or it's not, but this is really, really customized.
No, and that's absolutely spot on, Marco, and also what we talk about every day with the customers and potential customers. If we start with the information security, we know the risk of AI. And also for personal data, my co-founder, he's been leading some of the biggest data protection programs in Europe for GDPR. So we know in depth what it takes and also the risk. So we dealt with that. Our AI, if we just very simply, it's built in Microsoft Azure, and then you get, if you use it right, some of the advantages of Microsoft, which means that we can move the data anywhere, and we can change also the period in which it's hold. Secondly, it's not learning anything, so I'm not gonna call it's an AI without a memory. We trained it outside, it comes in, does the job, doesn't remember anything, and the retention period of the document and the analysis, we can change that up and down. Now that's one side, and that's also why we have been able to and been so lucky to deliver both to Big Four, global pharma companies, and banking. We all know those are some of the industries which has the highest level of information security. And then how we set it up in terms of premises, we did the benefit of what comes with Microsoft, which is it's an advantage. That's why also we choose that as our platform. Now, on the other hand, in terms of customization, yes, we come with standards which are driven by either the global standards like ISO 20001, SOC 2. So you don't have to, who wants to prepare for SOC 2 by doing self-assessment where you can just upload everything and then within a day or two, you know how far you are and it's telling you how to improve your documentation. And also it reduces your audit fee because your auditors will know exactly where to look. But if you have specific requirements, we made you a specific model, which means that we tweak let's call it checklist control catalogs. We tweak that. That's the advantage of us. That's also the advantage of we have some of the not, I'm not going to say global experts, but we do have some very senior executive. We have CISOs, we have chief risk officers, chief audit officers, chief compliance officers who have been in the game for many years. So we're not sitting with programmers or developers on its own. Our AI is not getting out of the door, speaking in plain language, without senior executives within the risk area have been following anything that has been developed. So if you want to have a kind of your framework as a client, if it's within a risk area like information security where our AI is extremely strong, it can be 1 or 2 weeks, but you can't even get a GRC system up and running in 1 or 2 weeks. If you just want to use kind of the global frameworks we have set up, you can be live in half an hour. Okay, we have to set up the location and the users. That's 1 day. 1.5 days, you get 80% efficiency. You get quality improvement. You get recommendation. You get a dashboard. Where do you get that in other traditional GRC platforms? And that's basically what we created. Of course, we don't have the workflows like sending out requests, but we can give everyone access with limited access, right? And we don't have the action plan management, but we do have API. So if people have a traditional GRC, which I really, really believe is needed, we just API in, and then we go, and then they have end-to-end GRC automated. But as I said before, they should obviously do sample testing because it's a probability model, which is the foundation of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, you just led me to my question, Anders. Funny enough, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, earlier you mentioned we need to validate. And in there, I'm going to suggest perhaps that we also need to challenge, right? And for the organization to trust what's coming out of your system. And so my question to you is, how and where should an organization begin working with you and your team and your technology to do some of the early validation, challenge, look at the outcomes to see, are we do all this manual stuff, which it sucks, but we're comfortable with it because we know what happens. And we perhaps alongside use your system and model to achieve maybe even a better result in faster time with fewer resources. How and where should an organization start? Is it something they really care about? Is it a particular part of the business? Is it a particular system or a particular framework or a particular regulation? How do you see that working?
Perfect question, and that's also what we're discussing, because what we say is often fine where you have a pain, where you're understaffed, or where you want to do better. Often it's within the new frameworks, and of course now we are set up in Europe, so we started with the European new regulations like NIS2, DORA, the ESG framework for sustainability. But very soon, in Q3 here in 2025, we will come with secure control framework, NIST, and the financial reporting controls. Imagine what that will do to the world and the workload of people. But what we start is we pick one. Let's just pick one of those we have, like ISO 27001. Let's take one. Let's take some sample. Our third-party risk management for critical IT providers. We'll set you up. That a few minutes. You'll do your proof of concept, and then you'll see for yourself how much better it is than what you could do manually.
That's fantastic. And when you're working the organizations, what does the conversation sound like for scoping and who's involved from a stakeholder perspective? Because clearly GRC and looking at risk across the organization touches a lot of departments. So how do you work with the right team members and stakeholders to ensure that there's alignment and buy-in from everybody that needs to be?
That's a really, really interesting one. And that's changing a lot, because traditional GRC, cyber, and TPM solution often have kind of the owner organization, CIO, CISO, Chief Risk Officer, third-party risk management team, and so on and so forth. But that's changing. So we actually had discussions with some of our clients, or not discussion, they were having internal discussion, who should own this? Because it gives the result where you are. So is it a first line tool, second line tool, or third line tool? It actually doesn't matter. What we say is, let's just show that it works within one domain. Of course, who is interested in risk and compliance? It's the risk team, it's the compliance officer, it's the CISO, and that's often where we start. Let's just show one, but I can tell you the ones that loves it the most, of course, it's the second line team. But then it's even more the first line, the process owner. It's whether it's HR, it's IT, or anyone else. They love it. They don't like all these control self-assessment, attestations, and audit. And suddenly, part of going through that, it's not disappearing out in the blue, but it's being eliminated to fractional compared to what they've been used for. Plus, remember, our AI also gives audit track, so it tells where you are compliant with what. So if you have internal audit or external audit, you get it served, and you get recommendations. So that's also changing, Sean and Marco, and I think it will change even more. The 3 lines of defense, I like them personally, and I've been working in them, but how the data and the documentation of GRC and compliance is being populated, that's changing with AI for sure.
I think there is a lot has been changing with AI, and it's amazing how much when we do this kind of conversation we learn from each other, and it opens our mind. So what I hope is that, as we always hope actually with ITSP Magazine, is that people listening to this, not only they get answers, but they create even more questions, and they go deeper into what the solution could be and the way they're running their business. And of course, they can get in touch with you, with Mark, which, talking about technology, his connection drops. So, but it will be listed in the comments below, so that the people can get in touch with Mark and of course with you, Anders. So I want to thank you very much for all of this, and I hope we're going to have many more conversations as we move forward. It's always great to connect with fellow European, and you know, it's a transatlantic conversation, right? There's not a business that is just in one place or in another. We are in a global economy, and one solution is going to hopefully in cybersecurity and GRC, ESG to benefit everybody. So With that, I want to thank everybody. Keep following us with the brand stories. And Anders, thanking you so much for taking the time and explain all the beautiful thing that Evolve Solution does, and in particular, Eve. We'll meet
Thank
Eve
you both.
sometimes, I guess.
You will, and also obviously we're not doing this alone. And now Mark had to jump out. That's a risk. That's business continuity.
Yeah.
But of course, what we are keen to do is, of course, partner up. We're not doing this alone. And you can imagine 1 + 1 might be 3 if you are professional services or a consultancy or a GRC or TPM solution. We are talking to the biggest of the biggest right now in terms of integrating because they don't have it, and everyone knows. They have chatbots. Some of them have a little bit more, and we have Eve, and others will have something similar, and that's okay because, as I said in the beginning, we are risk professionals, and we want to help risk professionals, and it needs more than one company or maybe 2, which might be the case right now, to actually change the game for how to demonstrate and work with GRC, and not having to do a lot of manual work. So thank you both, Marco and Sean. I look forward to maybe connect again.
Yes, absolutely.
US or in Europe. It's been great being able to participate today.
Yeah, definitely. And we will connect again online for sure. I know we're lining up a webinar where we're going to get into the solution a little bit more. Might even get a demo, maybe hear directly from a partner and or customer. So I'm excited to get that scheduled here in the next couple of weeks. And any chance I can nerd out on risk, and certainly risk, and the broader GRC for sure, but certainly risk. I'm happy to do that. So thanks, Anders.
Thank you.